The boarding gate buzzed with the usual mix of chatter, suitcase wheels, and tired travelers waiting for their flight. Among them stood Marcus Reed, a calm and composed man in his early 40s, dressed in a sharp but understated suit. Few passengers realized that Marcus wasn't just another businessman. He was the CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the country, flying quietly to finalize a $1 billion airline partnership that could change everything. But as he approached his first-class seat, the calm shattered. A tall white man in an expensive blazer was already sitting there, legs crossed, eyes glued to his phone. When Marcus politely mentioned that it was his assigned seat, the man barely looked up and smirked. "I think you're in the wrong section, buddy," he said loud enough for others to hear. The flight attendant arrived, and instead of checking the tickets carefully, she hesitated, glancing between the two men. Passengers began to whisper, phones subtly lifting to record. Marcus stayed composed, refusing to let anger win. But behind that calm exterior, something was changing. This wasn't just about a seat anymore, it was about respect, dignity, and how one moment can reveal everything about a person's character. As the plane doors closed and tension filled the air, Marcus quietly sent a message that would turn the tables completely, one that would soon freeze the airlines. $1 billion contract and make everyone realize who they had just underestimated. Marcus sank into his seat, pretending to scroll through his phone, but his mind was racing. He knew the man in front of him, Bradley Collins, was infamous in business circles for his arrogance and sense of entitlement. Marcus had heard the stories, how Bradley had bulldozed his way into boardrooms, how deals had slipped through his fingers because of the man's overconfidence. Yet, here he was, sitting in Marcus's seat, as if the world revolved around him. The hum of the plane seemed to amplify the tension. Around them, passengers whispered and exchanged glances, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Marcus's thoughts drifted to the airline contract. Months of negotiation, late-night calls, strategic presentations, it all boiled down to this partnership. The stakes were enormous. A $1 billion contract that could redefine Marcus's company and set a new standard in the industry. And now, this one encounter felt like a test not just of patience, but of power and influence. He thought back to the early days of his career, when doors were harder to open, when respect had to be earned rather than assumed. Marcus had faced countless obstacles, yet he had always kept his focus, letting results speak louder than words. Bradley, on the other hand, seemed to thrive on theatrics, using arrogance as armor. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Marcus typed a few deliberate words into his phone, a silent move that would ripple far beyond the cabin. Little did Bradley know, this encounter was only the beginning, and the consequences would be bigger than anyone on board could imagine. Bradley finally looked up from his phone, noticing the subtle tension in the cabin. He gave Marcus a smirk, leaning back as if daring him to react. "You're awfully quiet for someone in such a big hurry," he said, his voice carrying that same casual arrogance that had made him notorious in boardrooms. Around them, passengers shifted in their seats, sensing the invisible battle playing out in first class. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied Bradley, noticing the subtle signs of insecurity behind the confident posture, the way he tapped his fingers when no one was watching, the slight twitch in his jaw. He realized that this wasn't just a personality clash. It was a microcosm of something bigger: power, privilege, and perception. The airline deal wasn't just about numbers, it was about trust, integrity, and who could hold their ground under pressure. Meanwhile, the flight attendants exchanged glances, unsure how to navigate the tension. One quietly approached Marcus, whispering, "Sir, are you sure you want to escalate this?" Marcus gave a calm nod, knowing that this moment was more than just about reclaiming a seat. Across the aisle, Bradley was already pulling out his phone, probably drafting his own version of events to impress his network, oblivious that Marcus's next move would shift everything. At that same moment, back at the airline headquarters, a team of executives monitored the incoming communications with growing concern. Unbeknownst to either man on the plane, a single message from Marcus could trigger a freeze on the $1 billion contract, an unprecedented move that would send shockwaves through the industry. As the plane soared above the clouds, the collision of egos, strategy, and opportunity hung in the air like a storm about to break, leaving everyone wondering who would emerge unshaken and who would crumble first. Bradley's smirk widened as he leaned back, clearly enjoying the discomfort he was causing. "You know," he said, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear, "some people just don't know how to take control of a situation." His words were sharp, almost a challenge, and the subtle jab didn't go unnoticed by Marcus. Around them, the cabin's quiet hum seemed to intensify, every whisper from passengers a background chorus to the growing tension. Marcus stayed calm, though inside, every muscle was alert. He had spent years preparing for moments like this, not just in boardrooms, but in life where the stakes were higher than they seemed, and one misstep could ripple far beyond the immediate scene. He glanced at Bradley, noting the way he glanced around nervously when he thought no one was watching. Confidence, Marcus realized, could be a mask, and Bradley's arrogance was wearing thin under the surface. Meanwhile, notifications began pinging on Marcus's phone, each one a reminder of the power he held. Across the company's offices, executives were waiting for the signal that could pause a $1 billion contract, a move that no one could ignore. The tension wasn't just between Marcus and Bradley, it was in the room with the flight attendants, in the curious eyes of the passengers, and in the silent anticipation of an entire airline corporation that as the plane approached cruising altitude, Bradley suddenly noticed Marcus typing something into his phone, fingers moving deliberately. Panic flickered across his face, subtle but unmistakable. The arrogant mask he wore was cracking, and the cabin seemed to hold its breath. Marcus's next move could change everything, but no one, not even Bradley, knew exactly what was coming. The air was thick with suspense, and the story was about to reach a turning point that no one would forget. Just as the cabin seemed to settle into an uneasy silence, Marcus's phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a routine notification. A confidential alert from the airline's board flashed across the screen. Someone had leaked details of the $1 billion contract negotiations. Marcus's eyes narrowed. The leak wasn't accidental. It was timed perfectly, designed to unsettle him mid-flight. Suddenly, what seemed like a simple seat dispute became part of a much larger, more dangerous game. Bradley noticed the subtle shift in Marcus's expression and leaned forward, curiosity replacing his arrogance. "What's wrong?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a few keys and sent a secure message that would ripple through the airline's executive team. The cabin, still filled with passengers unaware of the corporate storm unfolding above them, felt charged with an invisible tension. Meanwhile, one of the flight attendants whispered to another, noticing that both men weren't behaving like ordinary travelers. "There's something bigger going on," she murmured. The murmur spread quietly among a few passengers, their curiosity turning to concern. The stakes escalated further when Marcus received a second notification. The airline's CFO had already been compromised by the leak, and the deal could collapse before they even landed. Bradley, sensing a shift in control but unsure how far Marcus's influence reached, tried to assert dominance with a forced laugh, but it fell flat now. The confrontation wasn't just about a seat, or even a personal clash. It had become a high-stakes battle for a $1 billion contract, reputation, and control. As the plane continued its journey above the clouds, every glance, every move, and every message held the potential to tip the scales, leaving the audience wondering who would outmaneuver whom before the storm finally broke. As the plane leveled out at cruising altitude, Marcus finally pressed send on his phone. Instantly, a ripple of activity ignited across the airline's executive team, emails, calls, and alerts marking the freeze of the $1 billion contract. The move was bold, unprecedented, and perfectly timed. Bradley's confident posture faltered as he realized the scope of Marcus's action. The arrogance that had fueled him for years couldn't shield him from the consequences of underestimating Marcus. Passengers began noticing subtle changes, whispers, flight attendants glancing nervously, and an air of authority emanating from Marcus. He leaned back, calm and composed, knowing he had taken control of the situation without ever raising his voice. Bradley's attempts to justify himself fell flat. He was trapped by his own ego while Marcus had quietly orchestrated the outcome. Then, just as the cabin seemed to breathe again, Marcus's phone buzzed one final time. A message appeared from an unexpected source. Someone within Bradley's own network had tipped off Marcus about a second, even bigger leak planned to sabotage not just the contract but Marcus's reputation. With a subtle smirk, Marcus activated a countermeasure that would expose the plot publicly once the plane landed, turning the tables completely and leaving Bradley exposed in a way no one saw coming.